I'm Ciarán Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Chocolate Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. With wet weather in recent weeks, we catch up with Dr. Philip Creighton to discuss corn grazing management. Philip discusses how to make the most of the remaining grass on the farm given the poor utilisation we see at present. We discussed the option of grouping up ewes to reduce the residency period and how we can manage graze outs in current conditions. Philip discussed the importance of closing out paddocks, in particular the first 40%, to ensure that we have enough grass supply next spring and what impact that will have on subsequent management. We also discussed the need to reassess the current supply and maybe take steps, if necessary, to reduce demand, with Philip discussing the current options that will be implemented in Athenry at present. We finish up with Philip highlighting the pitfalls of letting ewes lose too much condition by delaying housing or supplementation this winter. But first we start off with Philip discussing current grazing management and the conditions they're experiencing in Athenry.
Certainly very challenging at the moment in terms of graze outs. The very dry period early on in the year seems to be fairly well balanced out at this stage. We're probably 25 or 30% up on our rainfall level here in Athenry for October. And it is creating issues in terms of, the other side of the coin was that I suppose the favourable grass growing conditions there right through August, September did lead to higher than normal grass covers building in places. And it's the perfect storm, as we say now, in terms of we're getting very wet conditions, which is causing an issue in terms of utilising those. So how we're dealing with it, we're just trying to reduce the allocations really in terms of putting up a bit more temporary fencing, and kind of giving enough grass to do 2 or 3 days. If we get a deluge of rain during that, utilisation may not be perfect, but at least it's a smaller area that's been not grazed optimally, we say, or a smaller area where we're losing some grass, and then in between when we do get the drier periods, we're getting the opportunity then to utilise the other areas.
There is that bit of a balancing act at the moment. You're trying to keep enough grass in front of a ewe flock that's still in the middle of mating and try and make some use of it. It's really a case of making the best of what's available at the moment, but utilisation even in Athenry has dropped off significantly. So the splitting the paddocks fill is one option you outlined there. You're cutting down that area damage. I suppose maybe we look at it now at the start of November, a lot of rams have been out for maybe 2 to 3 weeks. That option of grouping them up or reducing the time they're going to spend in the paddock, how viable is that as a runner for trying to just cut down that graze out time?
Yeah, so certainly that has helped. So for us here, we would have had one full cycle completed last week, and that gave us the opportunity then to group up ewes again. So we would have had a proportion of ewes separated from each of the groups there to go to maternal rams to keep replacements. They get one cycle, and now we're able to increase the group size again, which is helping in terms of getting through cover the grass that little bit quicker, and it's less fencing required in terms of having to put up and down temporary divisions to try and utilise that, because we've a smaller number of groups, so that's something to be borne in mind. Look, none of us like going out and having to put up a lot of fencing, especially if it's lashing rain on top of you when you're doing it, but the idea now that if we can group up the ewes again, if they're just been going to terminal sires and to pick up repeats or whatever, that's an opportunity to try and get through grass quicker, with less work really, I suppose.
And you're effectively doing the same thing by just increasing the grazing pressure. Look, the other key thing at the moment, we always talk about graze outs and important cleaning out paddocks to 4 centimetres, maybe 3.5. That's going to be difficult in the current conditions, to say the least, but just maybe fill up first the importance of it, and in our current conditions, how tight can we push it, or how tight do we need to go, allowing for the fact that utilisation is going to be poor and underfoot conditions are difficult?
Yeah, so as you say, Ciarán, look, it's about trying to get the balance there between not making the ewes work overly hard. We are still in the middle of mating, but at the same time not leaving huge amounts of grass behind us, because the more grass we leave behind us, the more dead material is the potential to build up over winter, which is going to affect the quality of the grass in the spring. So certainly in terms of the autumn closing plan, yes, it has been very challenging. The targets would have been to have 20% of the farm closed by the end of October for a mid-season lamb and flock, and I suppose another 20% or 40% in total closed by the middle of November. Hopefully, with the weather forecast the way it's looking, we will have some respite from the rain, and ground will get a chance to dry out a little bit, which will help get through that ground. But all we can do at the moment is do our best in terms of, as I say, trying to get through the ground, increase the grazing pressure or reduce the area with fencing. Graze as best we can. So look, the target will be to graze out to 3.5 to 4 centimetres. In wet conditions like this, that's really not going to be possible in some cases without putting the ewes under a lot of pressure. So I suppose the target at the moment will be to graze to 4 to 4.5 centimetres, even if we had to get as much of it cleaned out as possible, and make a call then in terms of, if ground is getting very mucky or whatever, ewes are not going to graze that grass once it gets dirty anyway. So we can't restrict them from that point of view, so they're going to have to be moved on. But do the best job we can. Even at this stage, that would have been a target in the first 20%. If you were in swards where you weren't getting a perfect graze out, and it's not part of that first 20% that needed to be closed, so it's not the sheltered fields, perhaps we can come back over that again in 2 or 3 weeks' time, further on into the last rotation, to graze that down, close to the target. But the key at the moment would have been to try and get that first 20% grazed out as best we can, and now the next 20%. The reason for that, I suppose, and we always say, is to at least stick to the first 40% closed by the middle of November, regardless of we'll say lamb date or that, is that if we don't capitalise on while grass growth is reducing, and it's reducing fast in some places where soils are getting waterlogged, we will still have a level of grass growth late October and into early November, and that regrowth is the grass that's going to be there and continue to grow then when things improve in the spring, and provides the grass for the first couple of grazings after lambing. If we regraze that, or we delay the closing plan to go back over ground again that wasn't grazed out properly, we risk having very low grass covers come springtime. And just to illustrate that, the difference between closing a paddock in the end of October and not till the end of November or early December, for us here, we've seen it over the years in Athenry, is that you'll have half the amount of grass cover on those paddocks the first week of March, compared to if you had closed them in late October. So half the amount of feed available the first week of March, when you have ewes coming out with 2 lambs looking for feed. Her feed requirement is going to be double at that period than it is at the moment. So we have to make a call, when is that feed most important to us, and most definitely it's in the spring. From a feed budget point of view, and also from a labour point of view, we don't want to have to be going out and supplementing ewes unless we absolutely have to come March.
That's going to be your buffer turning, and you indicated already that's the pasture that's going to respond better to increased growth rates. Fertiliser is to get out of jail in many farms. The demand in the EU at the moment, 1.5 kilos of grass of an intake versus, we're talking 2.5 kilos Philip post turnout, increasing every week.
Increasing up to, yeah, exactly 2.5 a turnout, increasing up to 3 after 4 or 5 weeks. So it's vital really that we put every plan in place to ensure that we have as much grass as possible for her when she's hitting the ground there in March.
And there is that great temptation, particularly in a year like this year, indeed in any of them, to delay housing, to delay graze outs, go back on fields again. What we see in farms that don't have a proper closing plan in place is that vicious cycle every spring where they're chasing their tail essentially to get grass in front of them, and it rarely happens. You're missing that peak period. So your plans at the moment really have an awful influence on the production and the lamb crop and performance next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose something that we often see, this time of year as well, maybe, towards the end of November, early December is maybe when grass covers are starting to, get tight on farms. But maybe we don't come in quick enough, maybe even if it's only supplementing, on the last 20% of the ground or whatever with some silage or something, just to try and keep the ewes, maintaining condition, are certainly not losing too much condition in that period. Sometimes we can see, the month of December going into early January there, where people would say, look, we won't house the ewes or we won't up the feed until after Christmas. And a ewe can lose an awful lot of condition very quickly there in that period. And that then again is a big no-no in terms of how she's going to perform after lambing, in terms of if she's already used up her body reserves in that period, she has nothing in reserve there then to support a little bit of milking off her back or whatever come post lambing time. So again, it's important to keep an eye on that. And if you are getting tight on grass, due to weather conditions now or whatever, maybe you're moving through grass quicker than normally, put a plan in place that if assess, do you have enough, forage available, hay, silage, whatever, to start supplementing that a little bit earlier. And if you don't, make plans as to how you're going to supplement that or stretch that in terms of ensuring that you don't run out of feed.
I think that's a very valid point. Now, of course, a lot of this is conditional on what happens weather-wise for the next couple of weeks, but plenty of producers out there will see supplies going quicker, the poor utilisation, flocks are moving through ground a lot quicker. Looking at that option, even whether it's housing finishing lambs or just reducing the demand at the moment, it's no harm, as you indicated there, to just reassess where they are at present.
Yeah, definitely, and that is something that we have housed the remaining lambs on the farm here in Athenry last week. Partly due to conserving grass supplies and partly just due to the severe conditions, lamb performance had reduced dramatically due to the very low dry matter of the grass, really, I suppose. So again, that's an option for people. They have to do feel that things are moving a little bit fast, and again, that's why having the closing plan there is a good guide. It's partly there to show what's required to ensure grass for the spring, but it's also that if you're moving through the farm much quicker than those, 20%, 40%, 60%, it's a kind of a reminder there that something is not quite right here. We need to assess where we are and take action.
Good to get your take on the current situation and hearing how things are progressing in Athenry at the moment.
Thanks, Ciarán.
That's it for this episode. I would like to thank Philip for giving up his time to be with us and sharing his insights and experience and current practice in Athenry at the moment. Certainly, I think there's some useful advice in it. Grazing management at the moment is quite difficult, particularly trying to achieve graze outs and keep paddocks closed. I think the clear message from Philip is make the best you can of grazing out, take whatever necessary steps you have to achieve that. Grouping up ewes and reducing the amount of time you spend in paddocks is an option, might fit in with your breeding program at the moment as well. And certainly a key thing is to avoid going back in regrazing. Them first paddocks you're depending on next spring and turn, particularly the first 40%. So 20 by the end of October and 40 by mid-November closed up. Avoid going back in on them. I will include a link to the autumn closing planner, the sheep side of the house, in the description. It's a useful reference. It's something worth considering planning out for your farm. That's it for me. For any other updates from the sheep program, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Ciarán Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in to any of our episodes.